On a cool autumn morning, a thin, mud-streaked dog appeared at the edge of Willow Creek, a quiet town where nothing unusual ever seemed to happen. His coat, once golden, was matted with dirt and leaves. His ribs showed through his skin, but it wasn't hunger that made him frantic. It was something else, something urgent. The first person to spot him was Mr. Connors, who was sweeping the sidewalk outside his hardware store. The old man watched curiously as the dog darted across Main Street, narrowly avoiding a slow-moving pickup truck. Instead of running away from people, the dog ran toward them, barking once, then tugging gently at jacket sleeves, pant legs, even shoelaces. His eyes, bright and desperate, seemed to plead, "Follow me." Most people were too startled or too busy to understand. A few shooed him away, thinking he was just another stray looking for scraps. But the dog never begged for food. He never barked angrily. He only ran toward the woods again and again, pausing at the tree line to look back, as if asking why no one would listen. By late afternoon, a group of school children saw him while walking home. They dropped their backpacks on the ground and stared. One of them, a boy named Tyler, tossed the dog a granola bar, but he ignored it completely. Instead, he trotted a few steps toward the woods, then back again, his paws scratching the pavement anxiously. "It's like he wants us to go with him," Tyler said. The kids laughed nervously, unsure whether to follow. In the end, they didn't. The woods, after all, were deep and wild, and their parents had always warned them to stay on the paths. As the sun dipped lower, the dog didn't give up. He circled back to town over and over, each time trying a new person. A mail carrier, a couple walking their baby in a stroller, a woman unloading groceries. But no one quite understood what he wanted. That night, the town buzzed with talk of the strange dog. At the diner, customers swapped stories about him between sips of coffee. "It's like he's trying to tell us something," one woman said, tapping her spoon against her mug thoughtfully. "Like he's guiding us." Across the street, from a patch of shadow near the woods, the dog watched the lights of Willow Creek flicker against the darkening sky. His body trembled from cold and exhaustion, but he refused to give up. Tomorrow, he would try again. Because somewhere in those woods, something waited, and he was the only one who knew. The next morning, the dog returned to Willow Creek with the same determined energy, even though his paws were raw, and his body limped slightly with each step. The air smelled of wet leaves and wood smoke, and a thin mist clung to the streets, making everything look dreamlike. Most people were still inside, sipping coffee or rushing to work, unaware that he had come back. Lily, a 17-year-old high school senior, noticed the dog while waiting for the school bus. She stood shivering in her jacket, her backpack heavy with textbooks, when she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. At first, she thought it was just a stray passing through, but then she saw the way he stared at her, not with fear, but with hope. He trotted toward her, tail wagging low, and gave a soft bark. Lily watched as he took a few steps toward the woods, then stopped, looking back at her expectantly. She glanced around. There were no other students at the stop yet, no adults nearby. Just her and the dog, and the long stretch of trees behind him, dense and shadowy. She hesitated. Everything she had been taught said not to wander into the woods alone. But there was something about the dog, a pull, a quiet urgency, that made her heart race for reasons she couldn't explain. "Okay, boy," she whispered. "Show me." Lily stepped off the curb and followed him. The dog led her down a narrow deer trail she had never noticed before. Fallen branches crunched under her sneakers, and the trees seemed to close in, muffling the sound of the town behind them. The dog moved ahead with surprising speed, but he kept glancing back to make sure she stayed close. Minutes passed, though they felt longer. Just as Lily was starting to wonder if she had made a mistake, the dog stopped abruptly. He stood over a thick patch of ground covered in tangled vines and fallen leaves. His whole body shook with excitement as he began to dig frantically, dirt flying in all directions. Lily stepped closer, heart pounding. She didn't see anything special at first, just earth and roots. But the dog's behavior was too strange to ignore. There was something hidden here. She could feel it in the heavy stillness of the woods, in the way the sunlight barely touched the ground. Realizing she needed help, Lily turned and sprinted back toward town, her mind racing faster than her feet. Whatever the dog had found, it wasn't something he could uncover alone. And deep down, she knew it wasn't something she wanted to ignore either. By the time Lily burst into town square, she was out of breath, her cheeks flushed from the cold and the run. She didn't care that people were staring. She didn't even care that she was late for school. She needed someone to listen, and fast. "There's something in the woods," she gasped, leaning against a lamppost. "The dog. He's trying to show us something. I saw him digging. It's like he's trying to uncover it." At first, people shook their heads. Some smiled politely, thinking it was just another teenage story. But as Lily spoke, her urgency became contagious. Within minutes, a small crowd gathered. Mr. Connors from the hardware store, Mrs. Delaney from the bakery, Officer Reese from the local police station, all drawn by the strange tale of a stray dog and a mysterious patch of forest. The dog appeared moments later, as if he had been listening all along. His tail wagged slowly when he saw Lily, and he trotted up beside her, giving a soft bark of encouragement. His presence, thin and dirty but full of purpose, convinced the doubters faster than any words could. "We should go see," Officer Reese said finally, adjusting his hat. "If the dog's this determined, maybe there's something we're meant to find." Word spread like fire on dry grass. More townspeople arrived, clutching flashlights, shovels, and curious expressions. Some wore thick jackets and boots, others still had aprons or work gloves on, coming straight from their shops and homes. Even Mayor Holland showed up, pulling a scarf tightly around her neck against the chill. Together, they followed Lily and the dog into the woods. It wasn't an easy walk. The trail was narrow. The branches grabbed at coats and hats, and the thick fog made everything look the same. Yet the dog led them with certainty, weaving through trees like he had walked this path 1,000 times. When they reached the spot, the group hesitated. The ground didn't look like anything special, just a mess of vines, fallen leaves, and damp soil. But the dog immediately began to dig again, his paws working furiously, sending clumps of earth into the air. After a moment, Tyler, the boy who had first noticed the dog the day before, stepped forward with a small shovel. "I'll help him," he said. One by one, others joined in. The woods filled with the sound of shovels biting into the ground, of breaths puffing in the cold air, of the earth slowly giving up its secrets. None of them knew exactly what they were looking for, but every single person could feel it. Something was waiting just beneath the surface. The digging grew deeper, and the excitement in the air became almost electric. Every few minutes, someone would pause, wiping sweat from their brow despite the chilly morning, and glance around nervously, wondering what they were about to find. The dog didn't stop for a second. His paws were muddy up to the elbows now, and his nose was caked in dirt, but he kept digging furiously, as if time itself were running out. Lily knelt beside him, using her hands to pull away clumps of tangled roots and heavy soil. Then, Tyler's shovel struck something hard. Everyone froze. The metallic clink echoed strangely in the silent woods. Tyler's eyes widened, and he dropped to his knees, brushing the dirt aside with shaking fingers. A few others crowded around him, flashlights shining onto the ground, their beams cutting through the mist. At first, it just looked like an old piece of wood, worn and splintered, covered in moss. But as they cleared more away, it became obvious it was more than that. Thick boards, joined together tightly, formed what appeared to be the lid of a large box or chest. "It's some kind of crate," Officer Reese said, crouching to inspect it. His voice was low and steady, but his eyes betrayed his curiosity. Mayor Holland stepped closer, her breath visible in the cold air. "Careful," she warned. It might be unstable. The townspeople moved slower now, more deliberate. Every hand that touched the buried object did so with reverence, as if they all sensed that whatever was inside could change everything. After several tense minutes, they uncovered the full top of the crate. It was about 6 feet long and 2 feet wide. The wood darkened with age and dampness. Strange markings, almost symbols, were faintly visible along the edges, though time had eroded most of them into barely their scars. The dog barked sharply, startling everyone. He pawed at the side of the crate, whining urgently. "It's okay, boy," Lily whispered, placing a hand on his back to calm him. Officer Reese took a deep breath and wedged the tip of his shovel beneath the lid. With a grunt, he levered it upward. The wood groaned in protest but gave way, cracking slightly as it lifted. A smell, earthy and old, drifted out. It wasn't unpleasant, more like the scent of forgotten places and stories buried too long. Everyone leaned in. Inside, something shimmered faintly under the dirt and dust, catching the weak sunlight like a hidden promise. Gasps filled the air. They had found something. Something no one in Willow Creek could have ever imagined. And the story was only just beginning. The air around them seemed to hold its breath as they stared into the crate. It was hard to make out exactly what lay beneath the thin layer of dirt, but something gleamed faintly in the dim light. Officer Reese's fingers shook slightly as he cleared away more soil. Then, with one final scrape, the object was fully exposed. It was a small weathered metal box, intricately decorated with swirling designs. Despite its age, the craftsmanship was stunning. Each corner was reinforced with small brass studs, and the lid was adorned with an ornate lock that seemed to glow softly, as though it held some kind of hidden magic. The box looked ancient, and yet it had been preserved so well, almost as though it had been waiting for someone to find it. A collective gasp passed through the group. They all exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. No one had expected anything like this. What kind of treasure could be hidden in such a small, carefully crafted box? "It's beautiful," Lily whispered, leaning closer to get a better look. "I've never seen anything like it," Mayor Holland added, her voice thick with wonder. "This is no ordinary find. This could be worth a fortune." But there was something about the box that made everyone hesitate. It wasn't just the intricate details or its unexpected beauty. It was the sense of something ancient, something beyond mere material value, that made the air feel charged with significance. The dog, who had been sitting patiently at Lily's feet, let out a soft whine, nudging her leg. His eyes locked onto the box, filled with an intensity that no one could ignore. He seemed to recognize it, as if he knew exactly what it was, or what it meant. "We need to open it," Tyler said, his voice filled with excitement. He was leaning forward, unable to resist the pull of the mystery before them. Whatever's inside, it could be the key to everything. But the box remained stubbornly locked. Its intricate mechanism was old and delicate, and no one in the group had the key. For a moment, there was a sense of frustration, an unspoken question hanging in the air. Would they ever know what lay inside? Then the dog barked again, this time with urgency. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She looked down at the dog, who had begun to paw at the box, almost as though he was trying to tell them something. Maybe we're not supposed to open it yet," Lily murmured. "Maybe it's waiting for the right moment." As the townspeople stood in silence, the weight of the moment settled over them. There was no turning back now. Whatever this box contained, it had been buried for a reason, and they had been chosen to find it. The group stood in stunned silence, eyes fixed on the small, intricately decorated box that lay in the dirt. Even the dog, who had been the catalyst for the discovery, seemed to sense the weight of the moment. His ears were perked up, his gaze unwavering as he watched the box, waiting. Lily's fingers hovered over the box's ornate lock, but she didn't dare touch it again. There was a strange stillness in the air, a feeling of something old, something hidden for far too long. It was as though the box itself was watching them, waiting for them to understand. "What now?" Mayor Holland asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was quiet, as though speaking too loudly would disturb the fragile peace surrounding them. Tyler, who had been pacing restlessly, stopped and knelt beside the box once more. "We need to figure out who it belongs to. There's gotta be a reason it was buried here." The others nodded in agreement, each of them feeling the same strange pull. This wasn't just about a lost object or a hidden treasure. This was about history, about something that had been hidden for decades, maybe longer, waiting for the right people to find it. "I think I might have an idea," said Mrs. Delaney, the elderly woman from the bakery. "A while ago, my grandmother told me stories about a boy who lived here in the 1940s. His name was William Harper. He was a quiet kid, always with his dog Max. People say he disappeared when he was about 12, never to be heard from again." Lily's heart skipped a beat. The name rang a bell. She had heard the same story from her own mother, though it was always told in hushed tones, like it was a tale too old and too sad to revisit. William Harper, the boy who had vanished. No one had ever figured out why he left, or where he had gone. Mrs. Delaney continued, her voice soft but steady. "Before he left, William buried a lot of things that meant something to him. His mother's locket, a set of toy soldiers, a watch, and Max, his dog, was always by his side. But no one ever found out where he'd gone, or why he disappeared so suddenly." Lily's mind raced. She turned to the dog, whose golden fur seemed to glow in the dim light. Could this be the same Max? Was this dog somehow connected to the boy who had disappeared all those years ago? Could this box be his? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The others exchanged uncertain glances, but they all felt the same chill creeping up their spines. The box, the dog, the boy who had vanished. They were all pieces of a puzzle that seemed to be coming together. Whatever was inside, it was tied to a story much older than any of them had realized. A story that had waited for years, maybe even decades, to be uncovered. And now, they were the ones chosen to unlock it. As the group stood silently around the box, the realization began to settle in. It was no longer just a curiosity or an old relic. It was a key. A key to a story that had been buried in Willow Creek for decades. The connection between the boy, his dog, and the strange weathered box was undeniable now. Lily's gaze shifted to the dog, who was sitting quietly beside her, his eyes locked on the box. He was no longer the stray dog that had wandered into town, seeking attention or food. He was something else, a guardian of memories, a silent witness to a past long forgotten. "Do you think he knows?" Lily whispered, mostly to herself, but the question hung in the air, unanswered. The dog didn't respond, of course, but his presence spoke volumes. There was something in the way he sat, calm and patient, as if he was waiting for them to do what needed to be done. "I think it's more than just a coincidence," said Officer Reese, breaking the silence. "This dog led us straight to this spot. It's like he's been waiting for us to find this box. For what reason, though? That's what we need to figure out." Tyler, still crouched beside the box, examined it closely. He ran his fingers over the intricate designs, the symbols that had once been sharp and clear, but were now worn down by time. It was like the box itself was telling a story, its carvings revealing secrets hidden beneath the surface. "I think this belonged to William Harper," Tyler said, his voice tinged with awe. "And maybe it's the last piece of the puzzle. The boy, the dog, the treasure. It was all connected, wasn't it?" Lily nodded slowly. She had heard stories growing up about William Harper, but they were always whispers, things parents told their children to warn them about the dangers of getting too close to the woods. No one ever spoke of Max, the dog, but now it all made sense. The lost boy, the dog that had followed him everywhere, the items buried in the ground. And then there was the feeling that gripped her, the sense that she wasn't just uncovering something from the past. She was reconnecting with it, somehow bridging the gap between generations. The dog barked once, softly, as if to remind them that time was running out. The box had been buried for so long, and now that it had been uncovered, its secrets were ready to be revealed. But what exactly was it waiting for? Lily took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what was inside, but she knew one thing for sure. The story was far from over. It was just beginning. The dog stood motionless, staring at the box, and for a moment, everything was still. The group had gathered around, each person caught between anticipation and disbelief. Whatever lay inside the box had been waiting for decades, and now, with the weight of history pressing down on them, they were ready to uncover its final secret. Lily, who had been closest to the box from the beginning, knelt down once again. Her hands trembled as they hovered over the lock, which seemed to pulse with a quiet energy. It was as though the box was aware of her touch, as if it had been waiting for her to be the one to unlock it. With a careful twist, the lock finally gave way. The faint sound of metal shifting in the quiet woods. The lid creaked open slowly, revealing the contents within. At first, all they saw were pieces of worn cloth, an old faded jacket, a small leather pouch, and a bundle of papers wrapped tightly in string. There was no gold, no jewels, nothing that might have satisfied their initial curiosity. But then something caught Lily's eye. Beneath the fabric, nestled in the corner of the box, was a small, intricately carved wooden figurine. It was a dog, sculpted with remarkable detail. Every fur line, every curl of the tail, every delicate paw was expertly crafted. But there was something odd about it, something different. The dog seemed to be looking directly at her. Lily gasped. "It's him," she whispered. "It's Max." The dog, sitting at her feet, let out a soft whine and stepped closer, his eyes now locked on the figurine. He sniffed it briefly, then nudged it gently with his nose, as if in recognition. Everyone stood in stunned silence, watching the interaction. "This was Williams," Mrs. Delaney said softly, her voice filled with reverence. "I remember now. My grandmother spoke of it. He carved that figure for his dog. They were inseparable." Lily picked up the figurine carefully and turned it over. Beneath the carved image of Max, there was an inscription. It was faded, but still legible. "Forever together, no matter the distance." The words struck her with a deep, aching sense of loss. William Harper had never truly left. His spirit, and that of his dog, had been bound to this small town, to these woods. His story hadn't ended when he disappeared. It had only been waiting for someone to hear it. As Lily stood there, holding the figurine, the dog barked once more, as though in agreement. A sense of peace settled over the group. They now understood. The box hadn't been buried to hide a treasure. It had been buried to preserve a bond between a boy and his dog, one that even time could not break. And with that, the mystery of the lost dog and the missing boy was finally complete. The town of Willow Creek would never forget them, nor the secret that had been waiting, buried beneath the earth, for so long.